So we have 3 directors so far.
That is correct, and I believe that Director Gray will be calling in shortly.
How about Director Alvarez? Do you know anything about him?
Director Alvarez was not exactly sure if he'd be able to join us, but he said that if he did, he would be a little bit late. Is that correct?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, we have a couple meetings ahead of us, so I want to start right on time. It's 10:01 actually, and so I'll call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call to make sure we have quorum.
Yes, sir. Director Desi Alvarez?
I'm here.
Oh, good.
Director Gloria Gray? Director Scott Houston?
Here.
Director Harold Williams?
Here.
And President John Deere?
Here, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Oh, Gloria
Hello?
Gray. Director
I'm
Gray?
here. I'm here.
Very good.
I'm here.
We
Can
hear
you
you,
hear?
Gloria. Can you hear us?
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
We have a full board. Very good. Is there any public comment?
President Deere, we have not received any requests for public comment, though I do see that we have several people in attendance today. If anybody would like to speak under public comment, please let us know now by raising your hand. Seeing and hearing none, President Deere, we can proceed.
All right. Are there any presentations today?
President Deere, we do not have any staff presentations.
Okay. The action calendar has nothing listed, so we'll go to the information calendar.
Yes, thank you very much, President Deere. The first item that we have for you is item 6A. It is our fiscal year 2022 through 2023 program budget for the public information and education budget. It is important to note that our manager of communications, Amy Rocha, is out on family leave. And as such, we're going to have our executive manager of finance, Margaret Moja, lead these presentations. However, I did want to note that we do have all of our program and project managers joining us virtually today. So if you do have any questions about any aspect of these budgets, please let us know and we'll introduce the project manager and walk you through that. So with that, I'll hand it off to our executive manager.
Wonderful. Well, good morning, directors. Glad to have you here again today with us to talk about 2 more budgets, program budgets today, as similar to yesterday where we discussed our recycle water operations and our technical planning budget. Today, we're here to talk about first the public information and education, and then we will follow that with our water use efficiency program. But today's focus, or today, this moment's focus, is today first on the public information education. So if I could ask you to go to page 7 of your board packet. Again, I'd like to always begin with our mission statement, which is to provide a safe and reliable supply of high quality water to the communities that we serve. And certainly the role of our public information and education community certainly help us to be able to communicate that to our public. And so again, a very important part to who we are as West Basin. So if we can move to page 8 of your packet. This here provides you an overview of our public information and education budget. Again, I just wanted to highlight a few things as it relates to, just in general, as it relates to the budget before we get into the details of it. So again, we're providing you the details associated with each program budget. The importance of understanding the underlying assumptions is important for you to understand so that when we come back to you on April 13th, where we will bring the revenues and the expenses together, you will have an understanding of how the budget was built up and why we are recommending the overall sort of program budgets, the revenues and expenses associated with that. I will note that, one of the questions may be is, well, what's the impact to West Basin as we make decisions about moving forward on certain projects, if you will? From a materiality standpoint, every $100,000 has an impact to the district here. So if we make small little incremental changes, it may or may not have an impact to the budget, but those small incremental changes, when they group together, may start to have an impact there. So what that means is for every $100,000, that could be an additional dollar rate on our impact. It could be an impact on our coverage. And those are the decisions that when we bring that all together to you on April 13th, we'll give you a sense of sort of where it is. So with that, as a sort of a backdrop, if you will, for where we're at, again, we're here today to talk about public information and education budget. We wanted to share with you, first of all, just sort of who the public education department is and what their role is. And as you see there on that top right box, you see that they are there to provide communications about the work of West Basin, again, to provide on our mission statement there. They provide strategic communication and education programs to inform our key stakeholders and our constituents within our service area. So you see here for the fiscal year 22-23 budget, we see about a budget of $4.5 million, and we'll go into a little bit more detail of what that represents. In that bottom box there, it talks about budget objectives. These are the objectives that we shared with you back on January 19th at our Finance and Administration Committee. What were the objectives that were key to us sort of developing the budget for fiscal year 22-23? And you see 3 bullets noted there. One is, again, to increase our awareness of our district programs. We have some important things to communicate to our community. One is about drought conditions. Second is that we have a very important anniversary coming up here in December of 2022, which is our 75th anniversary. And you've already heard from our public information team about the efforts that they have underway already and throughout the year to celebrate, if you will, our 75th anniversary. Of course, we have our education programs. We're going to focus in on the sort of the return, if you will, to the school tours and those in-person events. And also, it's a place for us to highlight our recycle water projects, ones that are certainly important for us to show that local sort of reliability that we have within our area. But not only do we have an awareness about our district programs, but just in general within our region about what West Basin is and how they represent ourselves within the community about drought messaging and where we are as far as accessibility to those kind of things, and what we're trying to do in communicating that out on our media platforms. And then finally, as I've already mentioned to you, we are looking to do some return to our ECL, our Edward C. Little Water Recycling Facility, to do our tours and to showcase, if you will, what it is that West Basin represents. So with that, I'm happy to turn this over to the next page to give you some comparative numbers that you see there. First, I just want to highlight that as I was reviewing the numbers here, I noticed that fiscal year 2021, that column there actually needs to be updated. There was a misalignment, if you will, in my backup details. I did correct that last night in my preparation for today. And that being said, I will send out a revised slide here. The end result is that it still is a $3.7 million that we did spend in fiscal year 2021, but the individual line items are slightly different, showing that district labor and benefits was $2 million, overhead was 1.5, consultants is actually more like $44,000. And advertising is still the same number. Program supplies is just slightly lower at $28,000. We did have a small sponsorship at $3,500. Non-professional services is the same number, and our office administration is slightly less at $33,000. So again, the numbers are slightly different. The same total is the same. It's just, again, a misalignment, and I will get you a revised page on that. Just wanted to note that for you. So if you're looking at comparative numbers, I just wanted to mostly note that the consultant number is much less than what it shows on this slide here.
You know, I like the terminology. When I was a student in school, I couldn't tell my math teacher that I had a misalignment in my answers. But that certainly is a good excuse. Thank you.
Yes, we had. Well, anyways, we've addressed it. We will get you a revised page, and we'll go forward there. The one other thing we wanted to note here is that we're trying to show for you a sort of a general account grouping that you see there. So things like office administration may include other items than sort of what you see in the past. You know, we didn't get down to printing and office supplies and that kind of stuff. Those are all sort of being grouped into one line item. Or, for instance, non-professional services, those would include things like our bus transportation, and it includes our event planning services, in this particular budget. So wanted just to note that we do have, a finer level of detail, but for the purposes of just providing you sort of a pie chart of sort of what it represents, non-professional services include those types of things. And then consultants would be those that sort of work with us on our programming aspect and help us with any other types of support there. Again, this particular slide here is an important slide. It gives you sort of a context of sort of where we are with this particular program. Relatively stays sort of similar, if you will, from year over year. You can see that for fiscal year 2021, the actual $3.7 million, we are projecting to be about $3.2 million this year. And you see that that is lower than the two budgets that are presented here. And the reason for that is largely because that for the last 2 years, we have sort of been in a virtual environment. And with the return to in-person, there are increased costs associated with that. And so we'll go through that as we go through the budget here. Again, we wanted just to compare, if you will, where we think we're going to be for fiscal year 21-22 to the budget. So again, you can see sort of where we're aligning in those two particular areas. But also, most importantly, is just comparing to where we are budget over budget. So it's a slight increase from last year to this year. And again, a good reason for that, as you can see, is an increase in that non-professional services, mostly due to the fact that we're going to be planning to have that return in office. So again, something that we communicated back in January, but something that we will be discussing with you and to get your input on. And with that, I'm happy to turn to the next slide, which is page 10. So again, we wanted to provide some trend information for you here. First of all, the pie chart there represents those costs now in sort of a graphical format. You can see sort of where the large dollars are being spent. So again, while we do have sort of outsourced resources here, we do have a wonderful team of individuals that do provide sort of support that's here, and we'll go through just what that means as it relates to the FTE employee count in a moment. We also have a budget trend, so you can see for the last 4 years sort of where our numbers are. You can see that we've been around that 4 million mark, if you will, for back in 1920. It shot up to about $5 million in 2021. It came back down in 21-22, and it remains relatively similar in 22-23. And then you see that there by the level of effort in each of our areas. We do carve out our water harvest specifically because that is our signature event that we've planned to do. And you can see that that is sort of a bigger, while a small number, it's still that darker blue number you can see there in that loss column. Now, as it relates to the FTEs, again, we know that we had discussed last month at our February 23rd workshop, those individuals that are per each department there. But what is nice about West Basin is the fact that we have individuals that support one another across departments on their level of efforts here. So for instance, the Public Information Department provides support to our water conservation group, which we will hear their budget as well. They are, there is resources that are shared so that these individuals remain busy and active, not only in specific efforts regarding outreach and education, but also supporting other programs like water use efficiency and promoting recycling projects. The number that you see there is 12.45 for the fiscal year 22-23. That is made up of about 6 individuals, a little over 6 individuals' time, if you will, of direct labor charges. And then that 6.02 represents the indirect, which is again the allocation of overhead. I'm sorry, of the Finance, Administration, and Human Resources Department that support, if you will, each of those efforts. Again, we wanted just to share sort of like where we are overall on a programmatic basis there. So you can see there slightly down from last year, and largely you can see that big drop is actually because of the indirect cost allocation. With that, I will move on to the next slide, which will get into some of the more specifics as it relates to the public information and education budget. So first of all, I wanted just to share with you that communication and outreach numbers, that 501,650, that represents the direct charges that you see there. It does not reflect any of the labor and benefits. and the overhead charges, it really does represent those costs that we have towards these individual components, if you will. So first, I wanted just to share with you that in our advertising, we have costs there for our annual advertising campaign, but we also have line items there for various marketing and promo of our water use efficiency programs. In previous years, we've included those costs within the water use efficiency program, but we decided, as the effort is actually really undertaken by our public information team, and that there is sort of strategic ways that they are making that sort of that advertising efforts, that the water use efficiency costs for that advertising is now reflected wholly in this budget and no longer sort of divided between two different program budgets. We also have our consultants line item there, and most notably there you see this market research there. This is a concept of looking at finding ways to qualify market and segment demographics for increased participation in our various programs. And so we are looking to see how we can find those targeted audiences for our SFR, which means single family resident, MFR for a multifamily resident, and our DAC, which is our disadvantaged communities. Both are also with our businesses, our public agencies, and nonprofits, again, making sure that we can have focused messaging out to our individual components there. We also are looking to enhance, if you will, on our visual communications through various illustrations, animations, and videography. And then finally, on our events, our promotional items, our printed materials, those are the items that, again, because we have sort of, I'll say, been dormant out into the in the industry or into our community the last 2 years, we are looking to restock those particular items to really focus in on what it is. There's also a notion there of these roadshow outreach events, and there would be one per division, and more can be shared from our project managers on that. And I also wanted just to note here, one of the things that we've come across is that we could potentially get some funding through the Metropolitan Water District, through their member agency, for some of our costs that you see there for advertising and our consultants. And so we'll be applying for that grant funding and seeing if that could be applied to West Basin. At this time, it's not included within as an offset to these costs, but it's a potential for us going forward. So before I move on to the next slide, is there any questions on this slide here? And if so, I'm going to ask that maybe Daryl join me to help answer some of these questions.
Apparently not.
All right, Daryl, thank you so much. All right, let's move on to the next slide, please. This one here is our education program, and you can see the cost here is $332,000. Again, we are looking to do our return to in-person school field trips and tours. As such, those in-person tours, one of the benefits that West Basin has is that it does provide transportation to the schools, which I know that is very helpful to schools that are also looking on how they fund, various programs that are out there. And as a result, you'll see that there was an increase in bus costs associated with it. Zero this year, if you will, in 21-22, but certainly in 22-23, an increase in those dollars that are spending there. We are also looking to do a training program with potential reimbursement through Metropolitan Water District. And then one more thing that we're trying to do with our exhibits is trying to enhance those exhibits. Again, get a refresh, if you will, of those exhibits there, and there's costs included in the budget to make sure that the materials reflects sort of the current information that is necessary for us to share. We will continue to support our art contest and our solar cups and our teach and test sponsorships. Those are monies that are budgeted there for their, and again, this looks to show a return, if you will, of that in-person solar cup, if you will. We've been very fortunate to continue on with our art contests even during the pandemic, and thanks to our education team, they've done a wonderful job engaging with our schools in that area. We also want to revamp our Water Star kits. These are kits that we give out to the students as it relates to our water use efficiency and the importance of that. Again, it's been 2 years since we've had to do a sort of a refresh on that, and so we're looking to be able to do that. And in this case, too, is another place where we see where we have potential for us to go out and get funding through Metropolitan's member agency funding. And again, once again, we have not received notice about that funding there. We'll need to apply for it. But as we learn more about that information, that will only offset the costs that we see here. And again, I'll take a pause here to see if there are any questions regarding our education program.
Guess not.
All right. Well, then let's move on to our last slide here on water use efficient. Our next slide, which is our Water Harvest Festival. So you see here that we are planning for an in-person event. We haven't had one in the last 2 years. We did have one that was virtually, if you will, in 2021, and there was some great opportunities there to showcase different agencies that we work with, or our partner agencies with us. But certainly there's nothing better than being in person. And so again, we're looking to do that in person. Our 2020 event was canceled. That was at the height of pandemic. And so that was a prudent decision at that time. But you can see the cost there in 2019 as well as 2018. We had in-person events there. You'll see a slight increase in the budget for fiscal year 22-23. And the reason for that is that we are seeing an opportunity to really, again, showcase our 75th anniversary and to do other things that really highlight, if you will, education and in careers in water and really looking at our resources there. And the last thing you see there is that we want to take some of the sort of great lessons learned that we had from the 2021, building off of that success of those programs and bringing that sort of those components, if you will, from that virtual programming forward here into 2022, into the October 22 event. And so again, I will pause there and see if you have any questions on water harvest. And if that does take us to the end of the update, specific update, as if you will, for the public information education. And again, as EJ mentioned, the program managers are here to ask any additional questions or answer any additional questions that you may have.
The last year that our school tours were in full swing, how many students did we reach during the year for the tours?
The last time we actually conducted in-person school tours at the Little facility, that was in 2018 before the facility closed for renovations. It was approximately 5,000 students. We were able to kick off some preliminary school tours after our grand reopening in 2019, but then we had to shut down quickly because of the COVID pandemic.
I see. Thank you, Daryl.
Excellent. Any other questions?
Guess not. Thank you, Margaret. Another fine
It
job.
looks like Director Houston has a question.
Oh, Director Houston, go ahead.
Thank you. I don't know if I have any really questions. I just wanted to say, I think regarding the water harvest, and as we get closer to it, I mean, obviously, I think we're going to put some significant resources in it, but I do believe we probably should look at how we engage some sponsors to help offset the cost. I know we've talked about that in the past. We've kind of had our ups and downs with thoughts on sponsorships, but when you look at the costs, maybe that is a really good idea to make up for some of that revenue, if you will, from sponsors. I think that would be important. Just food for thought. I don't know, you know, with the staffing levels and whatnot, but maybe it is a good idea to look sometimes at outsourcing certain activities just because maybe a consultant's a little less expensive versus a staff, like if we're going to add staff or not. So that might be a conversation, you know, later again with staffing and such. And one of the other things I wanted to say was, it's really funny. I was actually just on the Aqua Legislative Symposium right before this, and they were having a great panel with, you know, Senator Hertzberg, Senator Laird, and Assemblymember Friedman. And they were talking about public outreach, ironically enough, and of course the drought and California conservation is a way of life. So it was perfect timing as I was about to get on this meeting. But one of the things that was mentioned is it is really important, the public outreach component for water agencies as well as for the the water managers. So whether that's staff or that's elected officials, it very much falls on our heads to get this message out to the public, because we got to bring the public along with this. So I think we need to really listen to what Aqua is talking about, as well as we implement some of that into our programs and messaging. So I'm just saying this is really timely. I think that putting resources into this is important. Obviously, we got to watch our costs, but I'm very supportive of how we continue to be creative and innovative, reaching out to our public, because obviously different retailers have different amounts of resources and or interests. I don't know specifically, for example, what some of our cities do on outreach, that are retailers, and some of them don't have the resources. So I think it really comes back to Metropolitan and the member agencies to push out a lot of this messaging. So this is very, timely, and so I'm really happy to see what you guys are looking at here. All right, so thank you.
And Director Houston, thank you for your comments. And you mentioned about staffing. And so in this particular case, staffing as far as the specific individuals under this department has remained the same. We do have an unfunded, if you will, public information specialist again, trying to be mindful of costs and really utilizing, to use your words, the other parties that are out there that could sort of support us in this efforts here. I mean, certainly, you will hear it in the water use efficiency. We have a budget, continued budget with the South Bay COG to help us in that messaging as well. So that is certainly a way that we continue to utilize resources that are available here. But this really is, focus in on getting that message out to the people about, conservation, about just conservation, about our recycling projects. And really targeting, if you will, that messaging in a more purposeful way. Not that we haven't been, but really, focusing in on those specific entities so that we can make sure that they understand the importance of drought messaging during this critical time. So again, you can see overall it's a slight uptick in the budget that you see there, but again, it's realigning those dollars to, again, be back in person and really have more targeting messaging. So I hope that the board sees that that's the intent of this this program budget, is to bring that forward for you. All right, is there any other questions on the public information and education? Because that does take us to the very end of this section here. Again, I want to thank the public information team for their input here. Really some wonderful ideas and programmings to celebrate who West Basin is.
Thank you very much, Margaret, for the excellent report. President Deere, that concludes item 6A.
Let's go on to item 6B.
All right, well, thank you so much. Again, item 6B is our fiscal year 2022-2023 program budget for our water use efficiency and conservation programs. Again, we do have our executive manager of finance, Margaret Mosier, here for the presentation, but we also have both of our water use efficiency experts, Gus Mesa and Jennifer Vasquez, available for any program questions that you might have. So Margaret, take it away.
Wonderful. All right. Well, if I could ask tune your attention to page 21 of your board packet. Thank you. All right. So moving to this particular budget, again, this is the focus on our water use efficiency and conservation budget. And as shared with by EJ, we do have Jennifer and Gus here to support me in sharing out on this particular budget. So for fiscal year 2022 through 2023, our proposed budget shows a budget of about $2.6 million there. In that $2.6 million, you can see that there's labor and overhead. Those are, again, something that, again, we spoke about labor previously. We're not necessarily seeing sort of a shift in that other than continuing support for that program from not only those two individuals, but others outside of that, that particular area. But we also have our consultants there to support us in these programs, as well as the various other costs that are important to convey, and that's there. Again, the role of our water use efficiency group is to make sure that we diversify our portfolio and make sure we make programs available to our constituents in a variety of ways, either through rebates or other types of programs that can really benefit our service area. Once again, our key budget drivers here that you see there are those 4 bullets that you see there. These are similar to the ones that were shared to you back on January 19th at our Finance and Administration Committee about what it is that our water use efficiency is focused in on. Is to make sure that we have a full suite of water efficiency programs that really are more targeted to the different types of customers that we may have for that. That may include residential, commercial, and institutional and industrial. We want to make sure that we're also looking at ways to maximize our funding associated with that, and we'll see more information on that. And again, really working with our retail agencies on that. We know that there are requirements for our retail agencies to meet certain thresholds, and we're there to support them to meet those goals. So again, $2.6 million is the intended budget for this one. And if we can turn to the next slide on page 22 of your packet, this again provides you that side-by-side comparison. Again, we have our actual of 2.1 for fiscal year 21, our projected for fiscal year 22 at a little over $2 million. And when you compare that to the budget, it's slightly less than that. And again, part of it is somewhat driven by the types of programs that we have and the responsiveness of those individuals that are there. But you can see that's there. And then you can see for the comparative budget from 21-22 of $2.4 million, we see a slight increase there, 22-23 to $2.6 million. You can see that we have similar costs there relating to the program, and we will go through the details of those costs that are there. But just to kind of point out some of the things there, program supplies would in this case represent the rain barrel purchases that we have that we are, either delivering by courier or by in-person events. Our non-professional services, our efforts with our ocean-friendly gardens and providing landscaping services associated with it. That's what that number represents. Of course, courier, we had a wonderful idea that has just really transformed our rain barrel distribution events, allowed us to still be able to put those resources out there in a more creative way of, since we couldn't do in-person events, we were able to still deliver them to them. So with that, I'm happy to start to go to the next page that gives a little bit more details. Again, that comparative analysis that you see there, that's there. First of all, that pie chart that you see there represents the costs associated with this program. Again, we are fairly got a wonderful support of our team to help move forward on this particular program here. But we do have other costs that support this. Again, our program supplies, office administration, and some minor costs that we have to support the program. And then also advertising. You can see that in past years, we had a small amount associated with it. I think in this year, it ended up being zero. And then going forward in the budget trend, you see the two costs that's there. Now you see a decline in our conservation budget or our water use efficiency budget over the last couple of years, and that's because in those fiscal year 1920 and 2021, we did have a fair amount of grant funding that was coming in that was offsetting the costs that you see there. Going forward, we have some hopeful grants that are opportunities that will come to us that may either offset some of our own costs or may add to our programs that you see here. But those particular programs that we had, the oh, I've just blanked on them, but a couple of programs that we had have come to an end, and so we will be continuing to sort of pursue those opportunities, and you may hear future opportunities about those going forward. Lastly, I just wanted to share out on the FTE effort here. While you hear that there's, two dedicated individuals to our water use efficiencies, they do receive support from others to support this program here, either helping them with the sort of the outreach and communication associated with our conservation programs, or supporting them in other ways. But you can see overall it's 2.44 of direct labor support, and then we allocate our overhead, again representing both the finance, HR, and administration efforts to them. And you can see overall a 4.72 FTE count for our water use efficiency. So let me turn over to the next slide, page 24 of your packet. Here you will see a few of the programs that are listed here, and in this they will describe what the program is, what our goal is, and how we budgeted for the fiscal year 22-23, and where we might potentially see funding to support that particular program. So first of all, the Rain Barrel program. It's a program that we've had for the last few years, and we've have had a chance to sort of think about our delivery on that. And so we are looking to still deliver 1,500 rain barrels to our residents in our West Basin service area. But by doing so, we're going to be doing that sort of the way we've done it this last year, which is having some be done through a courier sort of service, and then having in-person events. But we do intend to have 1,500 rain barrels distributed, similar to what we have this year. The program funding is at $160,000, but we do anticipate receiving member agency funding of about $57,500 associated with that. So again, a portion of that program is being funded by West Basin, but a portion of it will be from through Metropolitan Water District. The Socal Gas Partnership is a new program to us. And it looks to install with indoor and outdoor water efficiency devices. And again, and this goal is for us to provide 100 single-family homes an ability to retrofit in our priority areas. In this particular program, the overall cost for the program is $156,300, where we see that funding there. Most of it is coming from member agency. There's a small contribution from West Basin of about $53,000 associated with that. We also have our CII, our Commercial, Industrial, and Institutional Efficiency Program. This again supports the site assessments that we have there. The goal on this one is to do 50 site assessments and again distribute water saving devices for eligible rebates. The program funding for this one is $50,000, and in this case, that would be solely funded by West Basin. Moving on to the next slide. We have our grass replacement program. This is where we have a rebate associated with that. And again, our goal is to distribute funding to the residential and commercial and public agency incentives. So we are seeing an increase in this particular budget this year. We know that we are starting to see some real traction, if you will, of people moving forward and looking at grass replacement as a way to have cost savings, if you will, and water savings regarding their outside landscaping, if you will. So $350,000 associated with this particular program. The grass replacement press program is something that was introduced this past year to really focus in on those targeted areas of our disadvantaged communities here. Again, we are looking to convert some of the in those priority areas, providing landscape services as well as drought tolerant tree distribution as well. In this case, we're looking to have that fully funded through the member agency funding of $55,000. The public agency design assistance, this is our ocean-friendly gardens here. Again, we have a number of them that are out there that the district has funded in the past. We want to make sure that those are continuing to be maintained, and we see ourselves supporting that effort. And there's a cost of $50,000 to that, and again, that's all district funded. And then finally, the last bullet that you see there, previously mentioned by me earlier in this call, which is that the South Bay City's Council of Governments is there still to be our partner with us. And the budget that you see there is about $160,000. I will say, if you show a sort of a side-by-side comparison, the cost is the same amount from year over year. In the current year, 21-22, we were able to associate some of those costs to other programs, but all of the funding, while the same amount, is all being reflected here in the one number for you. So again, at the same level of support. Before I get into the funding aspect of it, is there any questions about any of these particular programs, especially those two new programs? And with that, I see Director Alvarez has a question.
Margaret, my question is going back to the previous slide.
I'm sorry, can you speak up? I couldn't hear where am I going back to?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so my question is on the previous slide under the Socal Gas Partnership Program. What are the priority areas? What areas are those? What does that designate?
Sure, and if I can have either Gus or Jennifer come on and speak to that item?
Yes. Good morning, President Deere and board members. Director Alvarez, that targets the disadvantaged areas, what we're calling the priority areas. Socal Gas has a program. They've had it for many years now, where they target low-income areas with energy devices. And now we're able to partner with them, where they're also going to provide water efficiency devices. So they'll be using their third-party contractors to install water efficiency devices inside homes and also outside homes for about 100 homes in the low-income priority areas within our service area.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I saw Director Houston came on screen. Do you have a question, Director Houston?
Yeah, I do have a question, because I see that I think it's the slide before this one. So, oh no, it's right here, the rain barrels. So I guess what we're proposing is we're going to deliver the rain barrels again this coming fiscal year. We're only going to do 300 each. I really am not comfortable moving forward with home deliveries if we don't have to going forward. I'd really like to have the in-person events again in each of 5 divisions, working with the nonprofit partners. And I guess the courier charge that's on the other slide for about $60,000 budget, is that mainly for this program? Okay.
Yes.
So I'm not sure what my colleagues think, but as far as I'm concerned, I really thought we were going to start getting back to the in-person events, back to what we were doing. This is almost a year from now. And I think we did well to pivot in the pandemic, but I believe that we're getting past that. And so personally, I would prefer to go back to the way it was done before. And whether you do 1,500 barrels or you do the 2,000 barrels, that's still up in the air. Because the other question is how much demand is going to be out there? How much more are we able to guarantee that we can get, let's just say, 400 rain barrels to folks? What I don't want to do is struggle to try and find people to take the barrels at some point, because remind me if I'm incorrect here, but aren't people eligible to only get a barrel for a certain time period and then they can't do it again for another couple of years or whatever? So I also don't want our staff struggling to find more folks to take the barrels. But I'd like to hear all of our input here, because I don't think we need to do the home delivery program going forward.
Director Houston, this is a great point, and maybe something we could discuss further at the Public Information Education Committee meeting when we do our water use efficiency update. It's really important to note that we've been studying kind of how we distribute these rain barrels for the past several years, our marketing techniques. Clearly, the South Bay City's Council of Governments with their e-blasts have really helped us out. But in addition to that, we've utilized the door hangers. And when I say that, we utilize thousands of door hangers to potentially get a couple hundred respondents and people to register. One thing that we found this year has just been the sheer volume of number of people that would love a rain barrel. We've been able to reach far different parts of our service area and really get people engaged because they can get the rain barrel delivered to them. So it's a matter of balance. And of course, we would take direction from the board. But it's really important to note that here we are at the early part of March, and we've been able to kind of distribute those 1,500 rain barrels in a very short amount of time because demand was so great for the delivery. So we'll talk about that breakdown of the. Oh, go ahead.
Well, let me interrupt for a minute because look, at the end of the day, I don't think it is the job of the water district to be a home delivery service to constituents. I just don't. I think that was okay and acceptable for a year or two in the pandemic, but in the long run, I don't think that that's really the way we should go forward. People were accustomed to having events with somewhere in their community and they would come pick them up. And, you know, I just don't see that we would continue to move forward offering people home delivery. Of course, people are going to say, yeah, bring me a free rain barrel, deliver it to my house. Of course, they're going to do that. But I have an issue with that in the bigger picture as a public agency to do that. And I just don't, I find it very awkward. I think we can get by with that during pandemic, but not permanently. And the other question will be, can we rely on people to, is it, you know, what is the magic number? Is it 300 barrels per division? Is it 400 barrels per division? So I mean, this is a serious question. It's a serious policy question. I think the board needs to decide upon at some point. I'm just going to say, I really don't want to support home delivery any further. Again,
let's
seven
bring
months
this
out.
up at the committee.
Well, however, this is in the budget, so I think it's relevant to give staff direction now. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, well, I don't agree with you, but that's okay. We have a right to different opinions. So let's go on. Margaret, are you speaking?
Sorry. Director Houston, did you have any other questions or was that just the one?
No, that's it.
All right, thank you so much.
And real quick, Margaret, to Director Houston's point, what we'll do is we'll bring back a proposal as far as doing all in person, and we can kind of look and evaluate and obviously take direction from the board as far as how we do that.
Wonderful. All right. Any other questions about any of the programs before we move over to page 26 on the funding? All right, so on page 26 of your agenda packet, I just wanted to summarize. So in total, we have regional support from Metropolitan Water District towards our conservation programs here. So we have a $215,800 number there, and you saw them where those numbers were being applied to the various programs there. In addition to that, there are 2 additional efforts that are underway, and we are waiting notice, if you will, from the funding agencies if we will be awarded. One of them is our USBR 2021 Water Smart Water Use Efficiency Grant for $385,000. If money is received towards that, that will go towards, my understanding, towards the grass replacement program. And this would be over a 2-year period of time. So again, the funding is not included. Should we receive notice of that, we can certainly incorporate that into our funding sources going forward. We also have an opportunity to receive $300,000 for the DWR 2021 Urban and Multi-Benefit Drought Relief
Hi,
Grant.
I'd like to make an appointment with Jay for highlights and I don't know what that.
Can someone mute that? Thank
Yep,
you.
I apologize, Margaret.
No problem. I just didn't need to hear about their highlights. So nonetheless, we have $300,000 grant that we put a request in. We're again waiting to do that. We should hear in the spring. So just in a little while, we hope to hear from this and hopefully be able to share some good news to you. And again, with that grant funding, that will be able to support us here as it relates to that. So with that, I just wanted to share a couple more slides and just talk about some of our accomplishments for 2021, 2022, and that starts on page 27. Thank you. So again, it was important for us to also highlight again the accomplishments of our programs. Again, we've had a program in which, we are fully, are supported, I should say, by grant funding. And as a result of that, we've seen great success there. And so you can see again with our funding that we get from Metropolitan Water District, and because of the pandemic situation, we were able to pivot to sort of not only in-person events, but also doing this to home delivery and be able to deliver 1,500 rain barrels to our residents, if you will. Through our Change and Save program, we were able to provide 500 free water efficiency kits. We were able to host firescaping webinars to the Malibu Topanga residents and made that information available onto our website. And then finally, to the last slide on here, which is on page 28, some additional accomplishments. We were able to install 300 smart sprinkler timers in the Malibu Topanga area, part of our Malibu Topanga Smart program. We were able to develop our grass replacement plus program and be able to increase that incentive, if you will, to $5 per square foot, as well as providing additional resources to those disadvantaged communities. And then we also did a webinar series where we had a West Basin chat to talk about our various conservation water use efficiency programs. And that really has brought in our engagement of opportunities to residents to understand sort of what these programs represent and what are some of the ways to navigate through it. So that takes us to the end of the slides, but again, we wanted just to make sure that you understand we've had some great successes with our water use efficiency programs. They do sort of change as our funding changes associated with that. And with that, that takes us to the end of this presentation, and happy to answer any additional questions or have board make any additional comments.
I have a question about the webinars. What's our total participation in those?
I will ask either Jennifer or, oh, thank you, Jennifer.
Of course, yeah. So 3 of them have been completed so far. West Basin chats, as you know, we've had engagement, 2 of them for grass replacement currently, and then 1 of them was for Cash for Kitchens. Varied residents participating in them. For the Change and Save one, I believe we received about 25 residents attend, and then we did receive a higher number for the grass replacement rebate because there's a lot of interest there for applications and how to get started with the rebate process. The first one of its kind also received about 30 participants, and I can pull the official numbers and the registration list. And then the second one for grass replacement was well attended at about 60 or 70, if I remember correctly. We do have 2 of those West Basin chats remaining, so we'll see how much engagement we receive for the last 2 West Basin chats of the fiscal year, because there's, again, a lot of interest for this program. There's so much changing in this landscape as far as the grass replacement rebate amounts and incentives that are available. So those are, a full report will definitely be available once we wrap up the full series of the West Basin chats. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, Margaret, I think we're concluded. Thank you for another stellar job. Thank you, Margaret.
Excellent.
Continue on the agenda, Mr. General Manager. We have no closed session items. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so we're time for director's comments or future agenda items. I'll open it up to my colleagues on the board. Any comments? Apparently not.
Chair,
So
Chair.
Oh,
Chair,
Director Gray, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I wasn't able to unmute myself on a few items, but I will just hold my comments. Frankly, I can't remember which ones throughout the presentation, but I did have some comments, but I'll wait until we have future discussions on them. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
President Deere.
Yes, go ahead.
This is EJ. If you don't mind, I did want to bring up an additional issue that was brought forth by a couple of different directors. I don't know if Director Alvarez is still joining us, but he has requested a potential move of a meeting. Next week, we have an additional budget workshop on the 15th. And I believe he was going to inquire as to whether the board was willing to shift that meeting. It's currently scheduled for 10 a.m. and it is the Water Policy and Resources Development Budget. The presentation shouldn't last, it should be less than an hour easily. So we would obviously take direction from the board if you wanted to reschedule that.
What day of the week is that?
That is on a Tuesday.
Okay, what time does he want to have it?
Director Alvarez, are you still with us?
And the timing again?
Well,
So
it's
What's 10
currently
a.m.?
scheduled.
I've just heard my name. What did you, what's the question? I have to apologize. I've been busy doing something here.
Director Alvarez, it was my understanding that you were going to inquire as to whether we could move the budget workshop from March 15th to a later date.
Yes, March 15th is a Tuesday, and that's a real difficult day for me to attend anything. So if we could do it either Monday or Wednesday, would be much better.
And Director Deere, if I could make a suggestion here, we do have a budget workshop on the 16th, so the following morning at 10 a.m. Again, the Water Policy and Resources Development budget presentation should not last too long. It should be one of our briefer or shorter presentations. So if you like, we could combine those two presentations and staff would be happy to deliver the information on Wednesday following we would just merge it with the overhead budget workshop.
Sure. If there's no objection from my colleagues, that would be a good answer to the problem. Apparently, there's no objection. We'll do that then instead.
Director
Okay.
Deere.
Director Gray, Director Gray,
Hello.
go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I have no problem with that one, but I do have a question. I also have on my calendar water planning and legislation at 1 to 2:30 on the 15th. Is that still on?
Yes, Director Gray, that is our normal monthly Water Policy and Legislation Committee meeting. And so we still did plan to have that at 1 p.m.
Okay, so we're moving the other workshop to the 16th, starting at 10 o'clock and combining both. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. The workshop from the 15th at 10 a.m. would just be simply merged with the 16th at 10 a.m.
Are we still doing finance at 11:30? Is that part of it too?
That is correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the accommodation.
Glad to accommodate you, Director. Any other comments or questions from my colleagues? If not, again, staff, as usual, an excellent report. We thank you very much. And if there's no objection, we are now adjourned.
Thank you very much, President Deere, members of the board and staff. We do have our Public Information Education Committee that will begin at 11 a.m., but I do believe it has a different link. So you'll need to close out of this meeting.
Yes, it does. Okay.
Oh, no kidding. All right.
All right.
Be that way.
Thank you very much.